History isn't just castles and crowns. It's grit. It's people doing whatever it took to stay alive when the world was cold, dark, and brutally unforgiving. And here's the twist. Some of these survival tricks later frowned upon or even banned weren't crazy peasant myths. Modern science looks at them and goes, actually, that was genius. Welcome back to 0 Hour World War II, where survival isn't theory, it's legacy. Let's jump straight into 10 medieval techniques that sound wild but work so well they echo all the way to modern fieldcraft. Smoke preservation was food security. Before refrigerators, people had to outsmart bacteria. Smoking meat and fish wasn't just about flavour, it was chemistry. Wood smoke contains compounds like formaldehyde and phenols that slow bacterial growth. Combined with drying, it removed moisture microbes need to survive. Some cities later restricted open smoking because of fire risk and air pollution. But the method kept communities alive through winter and siege. The same preservation logic carried into ration strategies during World War II. Controlled dehydration and curing are still used in military food science today. Clay and ash water filtration. Now, that might sound a bit odd at first. But you see, medieval households often filtered their murky water through sand, charcoal and cloth. Sometimes they even added ash from hardwood fires. That sounds, well, a bit sketchy until you realise that charcoal is a powerful adsorbent, capable of trapping toxins and bacteria. Modern water filters use activated carbon, which is actually based on the very same principle. Authorities later discourage home filtration in some regions because, poorly done systems could still spread disease. But the core idea was, and still is, scientifically solid. In survival situations, layered filtration remains a life-saving skill even today. People weren't just drinking ale for fun, Fermentation produces alcohol and acids that kill harmful microbes. In areas where water sources were contaminated, weak beer or fermented drinks were actually safer than straight river water. Some rulers tried banning low-alcohol brews to control public behaviour, but microbiology now confirms fermentation reduced waterborne illness. Even in World War II, fermentation science influenced food preservation and probiotic research. Medieval travellers valued wool over cotton for a reason. Wool fibres trap air for insulation and retain warmth even when damp. Cotton, on the other hand, loses insulation fast when wet, increasing hypothermia risk. This principle is now standard in cold-weather military gear. Synthetic fabrics today mimic wool's structure. What looked like simple shepherd wisdom was actually advanced thermal survival science. Honey, garlic and certain herbs were packed into wounds. It sounds primitive, but honey has natural antibacterial properties and creates a barrier against infection. Garlic contains allicin, which also fights microbes. Later, medical authorities dismissed folk remedies in favour of early chemical treatments, but modern medicine has reintroduced medical-grade honey for wound care. Medieval healers lacked microscopes, but they observed results. Digging into the ground for shelter wasn't laziness. It was physics, really. Just a few feet below the surface, temperatures stay relatively stable all year round. That means, it's cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. Some authorities later banned pit dwellings in cities for sanitation reasons, but the insulation principle is still used in modern eco-homes and wartime bunkers. During World War II, underground shelters saved countless lives using the same thermal logic. Medieval communities sometimes practiced planned fasting when food stores ran low. It wasn't just religious, it actually stretched supplies and trained bodies to cope with scarcity. Modern research shows that, short-term fasting can actually shift metabolism to fat burning and improve resilience during periods of limited intake. While, of course, starvation is dangerous, controlled rationing became a crucial strategy during World War II. Medieval survival wasn't just random suffering. It was, in fact, managed endurance. Instead of relighting fires every morning, folks would bank embers under ash to keep them alive for hours. That clever practice saved energy, fuel and time, which was absolutely critical in freezing weather. Urban fire laws, which came along later, discouraged indoor ember storage because of, the risk of house fires. But, the technique itself really shows a deep understanding of how to retain heat. Even today, modern survival manuals actually teach ways to preserve coals for long-term fire maintenance. It's interesting how some knowledge just sticks around, isn't it? People used to wear multiple thin layers rather than just one thick garment. The air trapped between those layers creates insulation, which is pretty clever. And this layering system also made it easy to adjust clothing based on how active you were at any given time. Sound familiar? Modern military and outdoor clothing, it follows the exact same layering principle. There's a base layer for moisture, a mid-layer for insulation, and an outer layer for protection. Medieval travellers didn't have Gore-Tex, but, they understood thermal management. Salt as a survival mineral. Salt wasn't just flavour. It preserved food, replaced electrolytes lost through sweat, and prevented muscle cramps and fatigue. Armies, in fact, marched on salt supplies. Overuse could cause health problems, and authorities sometimes restricted trade to control populations. But, physiologically, sodium is essential. During World War II, salt balance was a critical part of ration planning for soldiers in hot climates. Here's the pattern. These weren't random superstitions. They were field-tested responses to cold, hunger, infection, and contaminated water, the same enemies soldiers faced centuries later in World War II. What changed was technology, not the problems. Heat retention became advanced fabrics, smoke curing became industrial preservation, fermentation became microbiology, underground shelter became reinforced bunkers. Science didn't actually replace medieval survival knowledge. Instead, it explained why it worked. And some methods were restricted over time because of fire hazards, urban crowding, or evolving public health rules. But stripped to their core, these techniques show sharp observation, practical experimentation, and generational learning under pressure. That's the real survival mindset. Use what you have. Adapt fast. Learn from results, not theories. And that's exactly the spirit we explore here on 0 Hour World War II. How humans push through when comfort disappears and only resilience remains. If this opened your eyes to how deep survival knowledge really goes, hit subscribe and join the crew. Share this with someone who loves history, science, or just knowing how to stay alive when things get real. Because the past isn't dead knowledge. It's a survival manual waiting to be remembered.